Leona Birch kept her gaze low while she moved through the busy corridors of Crestwood Academy, hugging her old books tight like she was trying to disappear. Her skinny body and huge glasses made her almost invisible among the wave of students rushing to class. Barely reaching 5'3", with dark blonde hair that always fell in her eyes, she knew how to blend in. Almost no one at Crestwood even knew who she was, even after being there for almost 2 years. The grey stone buildings of Crestwood Academy covered 30 acres in a small town in Maine with over 1,500 students. It was known for its good teaching, but also for its tough social rules, where being popular was everything and anyone different was an easy target. Leona had learned this the hard way early on, when she dared to give the right answer in honors physics and was called a know-it-all by the cool kids. She walked through the halls carefully, staying away from places where trouble usually started. The big oak tree where the cheerleaders hung out, the art hallway with student paintings, and especially the dining hall during lunch, were all dangerous spots in her daily path. But sometimes, even when she tried her best, trouble still found her. "Well, look who it is, the bookworm," said a voice that made Leona feel sick. Gavin Blackwood stepped right in front of her, his tall body blocking her way to the music room. With his perfect brown hair and expensive leather jacket, he was everything Crestwood admired. His mean smile showed off his straight teeth, and his dark eyes had the cold look of someone who liked controlling others. Beside him were his usual friends, Trent Olson, a big football player whose face was always red, and Brittany Sterling, whose perfect clothes couldn't hide her nasty attitude. Together, they were the most feared group at Crestwood, ruling by making people scared and manipulating them. "Please, I just want to go to the music room," Leona whispered, barely loud enough to hear over the noise. She tried to walk around Gavin, but he blocked her again, enjoying himself. "The music room? How boring," Brittany said, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. "Are you going to practice again? Don't you ever do anything fun, like normal people?" Trent cracked his knuckles loudly. "Maybe we should help her have some fun for once. What do you think, Gavin?" Leona felt her heart beat fast, but she tried to stay calm. Her mother's words from her ballet lessons came back to her. Stay balanced, stay focused, stay strong. She had been studying ballet and modern dance since she was 6, practicing hard at the community center. Her mother, a former dancer, had taught her that true strength came from grace and knowing how to move, not from showing off. "I don't want any trouble," she said quietly, taking a small step back. She knew she could probably get away from them quickly, but showing off her skills would only make things worse. Her mother had always told her to avoid fighting if possible, and she had promised to only use her training if she really needed to. Trouble? Who said anything about trouble? Gavin's smile got bigger as more students gathered, hoping to see something interesting. "We're just being friendly. Right, guys?" The crowd around them was a mix of curious people and those who didn't care. Some students took out their phones wanting to record whatever was going to happen. Others just watched like they were watching a show. Mr. Harrison, Leona's history teacher, walked by but didn't seem to notice anything, like most of the teachers who had learned to ignore things to avoid problems. "Maybe you should try smiling," Brittany said sweetly. "You always look so serious and weird. It's depressing to look at you." The comments kept coming as Leona stood still, thinking about what to do. She could fight back and get away, but then she would be a target for every tough person in school who wanted to challenge her. She could tell someone, but that would only make things worse when the school didn't do anything about it. Or she could just deal with it, like she had been doing, hoping they would eventually get bored and leave her alone. "Look at her, just standing there," Trent said loudly. "I don't think she's even listening. Are you deaf or just dumb?" The bell rang, and students ran to their next classes. Gavin bowed mockingly before walking away with his friends, leaving Leona alone in the empty hallway. She waited until her hands stopped shaking before going to the music room, where she spent lunch trying to practice while thinking about what had happened. This went on for weeks. They would stop her in the halls, make comments about her clothes when she walked by their table in the dining hall, or accidentally push her hard enough to drop her sheet music on the floor. Each time was small enough that a teacher wouldn't notice, but together they made Leona feel scared all the time. Things got worse during a bad encounter in the theater. Leona had been trying to get her scarf from her locker when she was alone with them. The theater was empty except for some props in the corner, and they seemed bolder because they were alone. "You know what your problem is," Gavin said, leaning against the lockers. "You think you're better than everyone else, walking around here like you're so graceful, like the rest of us are beneath you." "That's not true," Leona said, but her voice was weak. "It's not true." Brittany stepped closer, her expensive boots clicking on the floor. "Then why don't you ever talk to anyone? Why do you always act like you're too good to be social?" The words hurt because they were partly true. Leona did keep to herself, but not because she was arrogant. Her mother had taught her to be observant, to watch and listen before acting, and years of training had made her naturally quiet. She saw through the fake social games that her classmates played, but that didn't mean she thought she was better than them. "I'm just quiet," she said honestly, which seemed to make them angrier. "Quiet?" Trent laughed. "You're not quiet, you're a snob. There's a difference." They surrounded her, not touching, but close enough that she could smell Trent's strong cologne and see the small freckle on Brittany's nose. Being so close made her want to move, but she stayed still. "Maybe we should help you come out of your shell," Gavin said, his voice becoming dangerous. "What do you think, Brittany? How do we make little Miss Perfect here more social?" Before Leona could react, Trent grabbed her dance bag and threw everything on the floor. Her carefully organized sheet music scattered, ribbons rolled under the seats, and her metronome bounced on the floor. The hours of work in those papers felt like pieces of herself being torn apart. "Oops," Trent said, pretending to be innocent. "How clumsy of me." As Leona knelt to pick up her things, trying not to cry, she saw someone enter the theater. Dylan Hayes, a quiet student from her English class, had come looking for something. Their eyes met, and she saw real concern in his face. Unlike the others who liked drama, Dylan looked genuinely upset. "Hey, what's going on?" Dylan called out, his voice echoing in the room. Gavin turned to him, annoyed. "Nothing that concerns you, Hayes. Keep walking." But Dylan didn't walk away. He came closer with a quiet bravery that Leona hadn't seen at Crestwood. "Looks like Leona could use some help picking up her stuff." "I said it doesn't concern you," Gavin said, his voice threatening. Dylan ignored him and knelt beside Leona, helping her gather the papers. "You okay?" he asked quietly, and his kindness almost made her cry. "I'm fine," she whispered, even though it wasn't true. The bullies eventually left, but not before Gavin made sure Dylan knew he was now a target. "Interesting choice, Hayes. Hope you don't regret it." In the days that followed, Leona paid more attention to Dylan. He was one of those students who didn't fit into any group, smart enough to be respected by the academic crowd, but also athletic enough from playing tennis to not be called a nerd. He had dark hair that was always messy, kind eyes, and a quiet confidence that she liked. Their friendship grew slowly through small moments in English class and short talks in the hallway. Dylan never pushed her to talk about what had happened in the theater, but his presence made her days at Crestwood a little brighter. She started looking forward to seeing him, and she realized how lonely she had been. Unfortunately, Gavin and his friends noticed them together. They started targeting Dylan too, making comments about the weird couple and saying that two losers deserved each other. The pressure built as the weather turned colder. Every day brought new insults, from drawings on Leona's locker to rumors about her and Dylan that made them the laughing stock of the school. The stress affected her grades, her sleep, and her ability to focus during ballet practice. Her mother noticed during one of their lessons. "Your movements are off tonight," she said, after Leona missed a step for the third time. "Something's bothering you." Leona adjusted her leotard and tried to focus, but she kept thinking about what had happened that afternoon, when Brittany had made loud comments about her and Dylan's imaginary dates in front of everyone in the library. "It's nothing, Mum. Just school stuff." "School stuff doesn't usually affect your dancing like this," she said gently. "Talk to me." But how could she explain without admitting that she was letting herself be bullied? Her mother had raised her to be strong, had given her the skills to defend herself, and she was choosing not to use them. She felt ashamed. "There are some students who like to cause problems," she said carefully, "but I'm dealing with it." Her mother looked serious. "Are you? Because dealing with a situation means solving it, not just putting up with it. There's a difference between avoiding fights and letting yourself be a victim." Her words stayed with her that night, as she thought about her training and what was happening to her. She had spent years learning to dance, but when she needed to use those skills, she felt stuck. The final straw came on a cold morning during outdoor lunch. Crestwood let students eat outside when the weather was nice, and even though it was cold, many students liked being outside instead of in the crowded dining hall. Leona and Dylan had found a quiet spot near the science building where they could eat and study without being bothered. They were going over English notes together, their breath visible in the cold air, when Gavin and his friends came closer with a look that made Leona feel scared. They seemed different today, like they had planned something. Well, if it isn't our favorite couple," Gavin said loudly, making sure everyone nearby could hear. "Having a romantic lunch in the cold? How cute." "Just leave us alone," Dylan said, standing up and stepping in front of Leona. He was trying to protect her, but it didn't matter. "Leave you alone?" Brittany laughed, her voice sharp. "But we're just getting started. We've been talking, and we realized we've been too nice to you two. It's time for some real fun." What happened next was clear and horrible. Trent moved behind Dylan while Gavin came from the front, trapping him. Brittany focused on Leona with a cruelty that only teenage girls seem to know how to do. "You know what I think," Brittany said, circling Leona. "I think you've been pretending to be innocent, but you're probably just as attention-seeking as every other girl in school. You just hide it better." The crowd was bigger than usual, drawn by the drama. Some students held up phones, ready to record everything for social media. Others just watched like they were watching a disaster. "Leave her alone," Dylan said again, but his voice was shaky. "Or what?" Gavin shoved him hard, and he stumbled back into Trent's arms. "You'll do what? Fight us? I don't think so." The fight drew even more attention as students made a circle around them. Teachers were nowhere to be seen, probably eating lunch in the warm teachers' lounge while their students acted like animals in the courtyard. "I bet she's not as innocent as she pretends to be," Brittany said, her voice louder so everyone could hear. "I bet underneath that quiet act, she's just like everyone else." Suddenly, Brittany grabbed the front of Leona's jacket, pulling hard. The violence shocked everyone, and some students gasped. "Stop it!" Leona said, grabbing Brittany's wrist, but Brittany was stronger and full of energy. "What's under here anyway?" Brittany said, pulling harder. "Let's see what you're hiding." The fabric started to tear, and Leona felt cold air on her skin as the jacket ripped open. She felt completely embarrassed as Brittany tore the jacket completely, leaving Leona standing in the cold in just her thin shirt while Brittany held the ruined jacket. The crowd gasped, laughed nervously, and chattered excitedly as phones recorded everything. Leona stood frozen, Her arms crossed over her chest, trying to understand what had just happened, but then something inside her broke. All the months of being embarrassed, the constant fear, the sleepless nights wondering what would happen next, came together in that moment. She thought of her mother's lessons, of years spent learning to dance, of the promise she had made to only use her skills if she had to. This was necessary. The change was quick and scary. The quiet girl seemed to disappear, replaced by someone else. Leona stood up straight, her breathing became steady, and her eyes focused. Brittany was still holding the torn jacket, laughing, when Leona moved. The first move was a simple wrist twist that her mother had taught her when she was 8. She grabbed Brittany's wrist, pressed on certain spots, and twisted, forcing Brittany to drop the jacket and fall to her knees, crying out in pain. "What the hell?" Brittany said, confused. But Leona wasn't done. Years of holding back her anger came out in moves that she had practiced until they were automatic. She let go of the wrist, only to grab Brittany's arm and twist it behind her back, causing pain but not serious damage. "Stop! You're hurting me!" Brittany cried, her voice cutting through the crowd. The students watched in silence. The quiet girl was taking down one of Crestwood's most feared students with moves that looked like something from a movie. Gavin and Trent ran to help their friend, but they didn't know what they were getting into. Leona's mother had prepared her for multiple attackers, and the small courtyard made it easier for her to move. When Trent reached for her, she ducked under his arm and swept his legs, sending him crashing to the ground. Before he could get up, she twisted his ankle, making him scream. Gavin hesitated as he saw what had happened to his friends, and that was all Leona needed. She let go of Trent and moved toward Gavin, dodging his punches. She deflected his wild swing, then struck him in the stomach, making him double over. While he was bent over, she grabbed his neck and squeezed, cutting off his air and forcing him to his knees beside his defeated friends. The whole thing had taken less than a minute, but it felt like hours to the stunned crowd. The 3 bullies were now kneeling on the cold ground, hurt and staring at the girl they had been tormenting with disbelief. Leona stood over them, breathing steadily. Her mother's training had prepared her for this, but nothing could have prepared her for the feeling of finally fighting back. "Please," Gavin said, trying to breathe. "We're sorry. We didn't know." "Didn't know what?" Leona asked quietly, her voice clear. "That I was a person who deserved respect. That your actions have consequences. That picking on someone smaller than you doesn't make you strong." The crowd was silent, phones still recording, but no longer focused on her humiliation. Instead, they were recording the moment when Crestwood's social rules changed. Dylan had recovered and stood beside her, offering his sweater to cover her torn clothing. He was protecting her without being controlling, and Leona felt grateful. "I've been dancing for 10 years, she said to the crowd, her voice steady. "My mother taught me that strength isn't about hurting people who can't fight back. It's about protecting yourself and others. It's about knowing when to fight and when to walk away." She looked at the bullies kneeling before her, and she wanted to hurt them more. She understood how easy it would be to become what she hated, but her mother's lessons were deeper than just dancing. She had taught her discipline, control, and the difference between justice and revenge. "I could hurt you much worse than this," she said to Gavin. "I could break bones, make you feel as helpless as you made me feel. But I won't, because that would make me just like you." She stepped back. "This ends here. You leave me alone, you leave Dylan alone, and you find someone else to be. Someone better." The crowd started to leave, students whispering about what they had seen. Some came up to Leona to offer support, including those who had stood by silently before. Mrs. Davis, the principal, arrived as the fight was ending. She saw the injured students and demanded explanations, but the crowd supported Leona. "They attacked her first," one student said. Brittany ripped her jacket off. She was just defending herself, another added. They've been picking on her all year. Even some of the students who had ignored the bullying stepped forward, perhaps feeling guilty or wanting to be on the winning side. The hearing was short. The school's rules said no fighting, but the evidence showed self-defense, and the administration had to treat Leona as the victim. Gavin, Brittany, and Trent were suspended and had to go to counseling. Word of their defeat spread quickly, ending their reign of terror. Leona was treated differently. She was no longer invisible, and people wanted to talk to her. Some of the attention made her uncomfortable, especially from those who were interested in her fighting skills. But there were also real connections, friendships with people who respected her. Her relationship with Dylan grew stronger, turning into something more as they spent time together without the bullying. They talked about what had happened at the community center, where Leona had invited him to watch her dance. "I can't believe you've been dealing with all of that," Dylan said. "Why didn't you fight back sooner?" "Because fighting should be the last resort," she said. "I hoped they would get bored. I hoped I could find another way." And now, Leona thought, now I know that sometimes people only understand strength. But I also know that strength without control is just bullying. Her mother joined them, wearing her dance clothes. "I'm proud of how you handled it," she said. "Not just the fight, but the control you showed. It would have been easy to let anger control you." "I wanted to hurt them more," she said. "I understood why people become bullies. The power feels good." "That understanding will make you stronger," her mother said. "Not physically, but mentally. The real test isn't whether you can beat someone weaker, it's whether you can show mercy." The weeks that followed brought a new reality to Crestwood. The incident started conversations about bullying and social rules. Some students stood up to bullies, inspired by Leona. Gavin and his friends were changed. They were no longer arrogant, and they avoided Leona. The biggest change came during a school assembly in January, when Gavin approached Leona. Most students had left, leaving the auditorium empty. "Leona," he said quietly, "can I talk to you?" She looked at him warily, Dylan standing nearby, but nodded. "I wanted to apologize," Gavin said, "not just for that day, but for everything, for making your life miserable for no reason." Leona looked at his face and saw real regret. "I don't know why I did it," he continued. "Maybe because it made me feel powerful, or because everyone expected me to act like that, or because I was dealing with my own problems. None of those are excuses." "Thank you for saying that," Leona said. "But apologies don't undo the damage." "I know. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did was wrong and that I'm trying to be better. I've been talking to the counselor and I'm learning about bullying. I never really thought about it before." The conversation was awkward, but it was important. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement and the possibility of change. As spring arrived, Leona thought about how much her life had changed. The shy girl seemed like a different person, replaced by someone confident and respected. She had learned to balance her quietness with the ability to stand up for herself. Her relationship with Dylan had grown into something real, built on respect. They studied together, practiced together, and talked about their plans for the future. She had learned that true strength wasn't about beating others, but about knowing when to fight and when to show mercy. Her mother's lessons had given her the tools to defend herself, but her own morals had kept her from becoming a bully. On a warm day in May, she sat in the courtyard where her transformation had begun, watching new students. Some looked lost, just as she had been, and she wanted to reach out to them. Her journey had taught her that everyone deserves respect. It had shown her that standing up for yourself doesn't require being cruel, and that true strength comes from helping others. The bullies had learned that actions have consequences, and that there was another way to be. The bystanders had learned that their silence made them guilty, and many had found the courage to speak up. Leona had learned that sometimes the greatest victory is in helping your enemies become better people. The shy girl had become a leader, not through violence, but through courage, control, and the understanding that true strength lies not in causing harm, but in choosing not to. Count characters in response equals 32,698.